Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what you're hearing is the frustration that while we seem to be in many instances talking tough about Iran, in reality, our actions are far away from our rhetoric, and that's a worrisome thing. We want to make sure that Iran's feet are held to the fire, and we don't want loopholes to allow Iran to wiggle out of the thing, wiggle out of their obligations. Let me ask Ambassador Mull. The administration said that on Implementation Day, Iran would receive around $50 billion, and the government spokesman in Iran claimed $100 billion was released. Do we know exactly how much was released and where the money is going?
Our estimate really throughout this process has been that Iran had slightly upwards of $100 billion in frozen assets in international financial institutions around the world. Of that amount, a significant portion of it, our understanding is more than $50 billion, is already tied up and committed to other debts, to trade deals that had stalled because of those frozen assets, and that, in fact, those assets freely available, of that slightly upwards of $100 billion, about $50 billion would be available. That has remained our assessment throughout.
Thank you. Mr. Smith, President Rouhani recently toured Europe, and in doing so, he is seeking to deepen economic ties, particularly, it seems to me, between Iran and Italy and Iran and France. He announced tens of billions of dollars in new economic ventures. Are we expecting that Europe will hold a hard line on the deal should Iran cheat, or I should say when Iran cheats? Do we expect Europe to enforce snapback sanctions if Iran cheats, when now it's becoming economically beneficial to have some of the European countries having these deals with Iran? How much can we count on them if and when Iran cheats? And I suspect that they will, that Europe will forego some of its ventures and slap economic sanctions on Iran.
Sir, I fully expect that Europe is going to continue to remain a committed partner with us and our sanctions programs. We have to remember that Europe had many of these trade deals before 2010, before 2012, and yet Europe has gone along with us. They've already sacrificed many of those deals the first time around and cut those deals off in compliance with the coordination that we've done and the secondary sanctions that we've implemented in cooperation with this Congress. So I fully expect that Europe will continue to comply with the deal that we've struck.
But the lifting of the arms embargo and the lifting of sanctions against Iran's ballistic missile program obviously could further destabilize the region. When the arms embargo expires, Iran will legally be able to ship weapons to Assad, to Hamas, to Hezbollah. International interdiction efforts will suffer greatly. And after 8 years, countries will be able to sell Iran components for its ballistic missile program. It's galling because during the entire negotiations, we were told that the only thing that was being negotiated was not ballistic missile programs, but just the nuclear question. And then suddenly we find this clause stuck in which allows frees Iran from being banned from purchasing ballistic missiles 8 years and others in 5 years. So how will U.S. sanctions work to address this issue after 5 years and after 8 years?
I think part of the reason that you saw the difference in what the UN would allow after 8 years was the way that we had all conceived of our sanctions. I think the UN had looked at those sanctions, and those sanctions were imposed at the UN, and we got the UN consensus because those were viewed as nuclear-related sanctions. So they were viewed at the UN level as part of the nuclear-related file. But I will tell you that the U.S. sanctions, our secondary sanctions, continue with respect to the ballistic missile program. We've got all of the major Iranian components related to the ballistic missile program on our SDN list. Secondary sanctions remain on those individuals and entities, which means that any European or third country or other actor that deals with Iran and deals with those entities with respect to the ballistic missile program, even after 8 years, will still have to contend with our secondary sanctions.
Okay. Let me ask you my final question. What has the response been from our allies in the Middle East since implementation day? That would include Israel and the Sunni Arab countries. What's the administration doing to reach out to Israel and our Gulf allies, those who are obviously more closely affected by the Iran deal, to raise their comfort level?
Thank you, Ranking Member Engel. In my current capacity, since taking on this responsibility in September, I have met several times with senior Israeli officials to hear their concerns. Secretary Kerry also maintains a regular dialogue not only with the Israeli leadership, but also with our Gulf allies on a regular basis to address their concerns. It's no secret that Israel was opposed to this deal. My impression since the deal came into force is that they want to work with us to make sure that it is implemented fully. That's a partnership and a relationship that I welcome. I intend to go to Israel in the next few weeks to continue that dialogue. Secretary Kerry most recently was in Riyadh to meet with his counterparts from the GCC states to hear their concerns. They've been supportive of the deal as well, but they also want us to remain focused on Iran's destabilizing activity in the region, and of course we will be.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ranking Member Engel. In the 1990s, previous CIA directors confirmed in congressional testimony that North Korea was selling missiles and technology to Iran. In 2013, former State Department official David Asher testified before our committee that a cooperation agreement signed in 2002 between North